Good evening, everyone. I'm Richard Waring, and this is the PoemWorks reading series. We have a wonderful book launch tonight with Steve Nickman. But first, let me share a few quotes that I've collected over the previous couple of weeks. Baron Wormser says, and this hits on the importance of the kind of language that poets speak, the language of metaphor. Baron says, the war in Vietnam was fought in part over the metaphor of dominoes.
Oh, that's powerful.
And I recently, on the Dyer Literary Poetry Series, heard Diane Seuss, who recently won a Pulitzer. And I thought this was interesting. She said, be led by the poem, not by the product. Let the poem do the work,
not the product,
drawing you in. And I also heard Gregory Orr, who I'm not sure if everyone knows.
Yeah.
He's quite amazing and has dealt with a lot of trauma, including killing his own brother in a hunting accident when he was 12 years old. And he says, we're lucky poems are of no value so that we can give them away. After all, weren't they given to you? And he also says, a poem of grief is not grief. Grief is grief. A poem uses words not just to name things, but to change things. The language transforms trauma into affirmation. So tonight, it's a great pleasure to introduce Steve Nickman, who is an almost retired child psychiatrist in Brookline, Massachusetts. In 26, he joined Barbara Helfgott Hyatt's workshop and realized that much of what his patients had to say was poetry. Working with adoptees, children of divorced parents, and bereaved kids has given him insight into various ways connection can be lost. He enjoys learning foreign languages, but is fluent in none. And he plays the piano when no one is present. He is married, has 2 sons, and hopes for grandchildren. Please welcome Steve.
Thank you, Richard. It's great to be here. I appreciate the chance. My first poem is called The Inextinguishable, and it comes from standing at night looking up at the night sky in Taos, New Mexico. The Inextinguishable. This dull, bare dust is lit by the inextinguishable blaze of our old, still continuing creation that continues sending brief telegraphs to our address. Photons, the light bearers, earth built from atoms, titanium, gold, tin, silver, selenium. Look up, it's clear. Look up, it's close. Stars of the Dipper, stars of Perseus. Your hands reach up to touch what your eyes can see, but skin lacks skill to feel this disembarking without ships. This vast particulate navy of brave, stateless sailors, this motley foreign legion, firebringers, architects, convergers, not invaders. For at first, there was nothing to invade. Dispatched from all surround to carry nothing but themselves, landing, landing, landing. And the next one is called The Gift of Tart Cherries. I was given some tart cherries, the kind that are great in pies, and I made a cherry pie. But at that time, there was war going on in Ukraine. And I had I had a hard time getting my mind around making a cherry pie and while people were being killed. The gift of tart cherries imposes a duty beyond routine, quiets the same memories it arouses. First, the pitting, the red hands, rolling dough flattens a village. Bottom crust, cherries, then sugar, top crust. What I have made is crucial. I turn on the oven, wait, watch rubies flow. When cool enough, eat. Bless if I can. Nothing has died.
Mm.
And we're still in Europe. This one was inspired by a recording of a song by a gypsy band, Romanian gypsy band. Dark leaf of the copper beech, green leaf of the apple tree. Let me tell you how it all goes down. Without Osama, our devil is gone. Dark leaf of the copper beech, laugh at the magpie perched on the horse when swastikas burned. Lily of the valley, let me tell you, at those times, we danced the horror. Quaking aspen leaf, believe me, it gets harder then to look in the mirror. Gray ash of lately murdered shrines. Here's why you're scattered to the winds. We hire new brokers to sell our dark. The dark we earn our living from. Black plum, brown chestnut, weep with me.
You hear it all right? Most of it, yeah. Do you want me to turn it on? No, I'll do it.
And this is the last of a kind of a dark series.
It's here.
To what purpose this brutal century? At times of change or trouble, I dream the rearrangement of public spaces. But no one asked my advice about it, and my feet hurt. I ask directions, no one pays attention. I am Tantalus or Sisyphus. I am Gilgamesh who has lost Enkidu. I can only weep. A random vastness has overtaken these new halls placed thoughtlessly among the old. Polished marble floors, niches that hold new statues. And there's a few now that are from established forms. There's a sonnet, a couple of pantoums, and one little one. I'm not quite sure what that one is. And the first of this group is called 6 or 7 Magpies. And this also comes from being at Taos, New Mexico. And this is a sonnet. 6 or 7 magpies in loud palaver. I watch their domain. I wait to see them fly from this dance stand of juniper. Study their piebald ambiguity. Their tails iridescent black indigo, contrast of white on patches of wing. But now they go silent in this shadow glade of spirits meeting. I can't call it a clash of wills. Her interests are not reciprocal. Barely glimpsed twitching of tails and bills, an unsatisfactory spectacle. Like anyone else, these birds choose days and times to be seen in public displays. And the next one is impossible changes. And there's an epigraph. I once treated a woman patient for some years who was psychotically depressed the first 20 minutes of each day. D.W. Winnicott. Impossible changes. The Pantoum. White tulips in the blue glass vase, a bit of hope I brought into the house. At first, they turned downward. Next day, they stood upright as athletes. A bit of hope I brought into the house. Like the new kitten our coon cat hissed at. Next day, they stood upright as athletes. Soon the cat nuzzled the kitten. Like the new kitten our coon cat hissed at, our son, his knee scraped, shivered in fear. Soon the cat nuzzled the kitten, and he laughed, crazy happy. Our son, his knee scraped, shivered in fear, seeing his own blood, thinking he'd lose it all. And he laughed, crazy happy, from the cat's your kiss and little song. Seeing his own blood, thinking he'd lose it all. That's where I am each morning, until I think of the cats, your kisses and little songs. How impossible changes can happen quickly. That's where I am each morning until I think, at first they turned downward. How impossible changes can happen quickly. White tulips in the blue glass vase. It must have been a cheap one. It's not a vase. And it's another Pantoum. He stood like that and stood. He stood like that and stood, slowly weeping, like honey from a spoon. Small compensation. Slowly weeping at his round mouth's corner. Small compensation. Words he could not speak. At his round mouth's corner, tears became words he could not speak. A river, plums and oranges. Tears became a swift, relentless flow. A river, plums and oranges on the bare stage. A swift, relentless flow. His gift was tears. On the bare stage, he stood like that. His gift was tears, like honey from a spoon. He stood like that. He stood like that and stood. In the elevator, mostly strangers here enclosed, a few with fear of boxed-in places. We stand in equidistant spots, ensuring interpersonal spaces. In our own bubbles, we barely note the small boy's cry, his woeful faces. But now we thaw. His mother kneels, relieves his feet, reties his laces.
I'm gonna go pee. Okay.
And following on the theme of people who don't know each other in the same space, the waiting room has been waiting for us to sit alone together in straight-backed chairs in our common condition, breathing the shared heavy air of unnamed company. I occupy myself guessing whose tomatoes failed last year. Who watches birds as I do? Who puts no stock in global warming? Who smiles at children? A monstrous fly circles, zoozling through our space, dares us separate souls to converge on something we all notice. The boy in the Red Sox cap, responding to necessity, lifts a window screen, his hand well practiced in grabbing pop flies out in left field. Applause. The grinning hero bows. The next one is called, it's called In the Airport Lounge. It's a prose poem, and it's kind of modeled on Roger Tory Peterson's Field Guide to the Birds. And it has an epigraph by Irving Goffman, the sociologist. In American society, most wits, that's W-I-T-H-S, most wits in streets and stores contain only two persons, although three-person and even four-person wits are found. In the airport lounge. Airports are the best location for observing young human wits, followed by scenic parks. Field marks that distinguish these from business and family wits include brighter coloration, playfulness, group cohesion, and larger membership, flocking. Sweetheart wits are pairs, usually but not necessarily of mixed gender. Close proximity of members and nearly inaudible vocalizing are usual, with long sustained mutual gaze and touching, grooming. Tourist wits consist of flocks numbering 4 or more, holding maps, guidebooks, and cell phones, and speaking non-Indigenous languages. A range of personalities is noted, from dominant to easily led. These groups may appear uncivil by virtue of their exuberance and non-aggressive invasion of available space, but their lively exchanges reward the tolerant hobbyist. Athletic wits are gender concordant groups of 7 to 10, sometimes accompanied by an adult coach. Members often carry wooden sticks, skateboards, or other equipment. Individuals may be large and well coordinated, as evidenced at times by skillful demonstrations, e.g., keeping small objects in the air using both ankles, hacky sack. In general, mutual alertness of members is perhaps the most striking aspect of juvenile wits behavior. Members of teams are highly aware of each other's location, share information gleaned from flight displays, and behave toward non-members in a civil fashion. Tourist wits demonstrate chaotic playfulness, while pairs of sweethearts show nothing short of love, comparable to the beak clacking and free exchange of fish catch shown by the northern gannet. We're close to the halfway point, Richard. I don't know what you think about making it. Let me. We could pause after this one, or we can keep going. This one is on the Boston-Paris flight.
Okay.
On the Boston-Paris flight, in his seat by the window, The schoolboy in gym shoes wakes up, drinks in the clouds, turns his blue eyes to me, a stranger, asks me the time. Sais-tu l'heure? He tests me. Do you know the sun god's name? Apollo. He asks, who rules the sky? Zeus. And who the sea is? Poseidon. I pass his test. Holiness and daylight break out unannounced as ocean awakens its own vermilion child.
Wow, that was a great first half. Thank you. We will entertain questions now, one of which I have come up with, and that is, I'm curious to know when you realize that a poem needs to take the form of a pantoum.
You should take one. A specific form.
I don't think I can really answer that. I think the few that I've written have been when I decided I was going to try to write a pantoum. I don't know what other people think.
I find that sometimes a particularly haunting subject matter that recurs again and again might be able to facilitate a pantoum, and the kind of rhythms that go on in this kind of neurotic mental behavior would then be kind of braided into or woven into the lines of the poem. Other questions that people have?
We could go on if people are.
Well, I was curious, you talk about a number of languages that you know, none of them fluently. You apparently know fly language because you used a particular word.
Zoozling.
Yeah. How is that spelled?
But that's onomatopoeia rather than fly language, I think. But I don't know, Zroozling.
Well, it's throwing language at a particular sound.
Oh yeah.
But I had not heard that word before. So it made me feel that you had, some particular stake in hearing more intimately the fly than I had.
I was trying for onomatopoeia. Well, isn't that how one theory about how language originated in the first place? I don't know.
Possibly, yeah. I think, for instance, I think the chicken speaks cock-a-doodle-doo in English, but in other languages, it would be different in Thai, for instance.
Well, and the theory that the mama is universal, I think is totally wrong, because there's a language I've run across, I think Korean maybe, where mama means father.
I have a friend, and her son, his first words were Whitey Bulger. He heard the name on the radio a lot. Whitey Bulger. So you never can tell. Well, let us continue on. But save up those questions for afterwards.
I was told that when I was 2, I knew that the bush in front of our house was Cryptomeria japonica. I think my parents got a lot of mileage out of that.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I have a series of poems now about love, sex, marriage, and how marriage goes on. In the kitchen, on the cutting board, Vidalia reclines, offers herself up, her one pretension, the tawny, clinging negligee. I disrobe her, admire as I have since boyhood, spheres within spheres. The urge toward interior, the urge to enact again. Burning, I hold Saturn's crisp, silent, luminous rings.
Nice.
In the bedroom. In our bedroom, you've undressed down to your bra and cut off jeans. The scarlet maple leaf you haven't noticed clings to your calf. It's not okay for me to ask. Anyway, I already know. You've been rolling under Orion's belt on the wet October lawn, unfaithful. The fragility of the open heart. What did you see through the wide open door to the patio? Only a deer, you said. You went out cautiously so as not to frighten it. Was it afraid, I asked, when you returned? Only a little, you said, but you seemed changed by the encounter. I'm more than a little frightened by the quick emptiness of not being seen when your eyes begin to speak another language, when we lose the grammar of truth, the will to translate. The firefly. Tuesday in the rain, on the train ride to the cemetery, the firefly. In the tangles of whose fault is it? And you shouldn't have, the firefly. In talk and work, in cooking, it parades itself when you least require it. When you forget it, when you think you imagined it, the firefly forgives you. Like the letter you were sure was lost, but never thought of looking on the table. The firefly is there. How's our time? How's our time? I think I may need to, I think I have about 6 or 7 more. I may need to cut some of those out.
No, that's fine.
Okay, Godspeed. We bought our house for its flagstone path, casement windows, all the flowering bushes, and had 2 children there. I built them a tree platform so the older boy could help his brother up. I planted ivy. The mountain laurel's flowers opened into stars. Russell announced at dinner, I sneezed 3 times at midnight. Told us a goose stole t-shirts from his drawer. Peter called God from the kitchen window, fenced in his private country on the back lawn. No one invaded. Peacocks paraded. Proud families of pheasants, late August tomatoes grew impossibly red, and the emerald leafhoppers sat there throned. Our sons live in different precincts now. Crows convene on autumn branches in their raucous hundreds. Something makes noises in the attic. Gypsy moths breed and click in gauzy bags. Turkeys strut self-important and consume our berries. At dusk, we hear coyotes.
Nice.
So this next one is called Stroke. My wife had a stroke in 2004, and she continued living in the house for a number of years and eventually moved to assisted living, which the next poem, oh, yeah. So this stroke, and this is actually the title, the poem that I got my title from. The odd thing is, I never know if you're asleep and dreaming or awake, or whether I'm awake or dreaming that you called. I miss the most the way we used to scan each other's backs for little blemishes, for what we could relieve each other of, and all the little murmurs after sex, then sleep with hip to hip, old friends. Our children slept with bears. We were each other's animals.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
The lion in my mind, for my wife in assisted living. You would have loved the lion in my mind this morning. He was sleeping next to me on the lawn behind our old house, peaceable, like the one in Rousseau's Sleeping Gypsy. The azaleas had come into bloom, the magenta ones. The sun was rising, and I was wet with dew. Reached out for you, but felt his fur instead. He sniffed, yawned, opened his eyes, thrummed like a cello. The neighborhood wild turkeys approached in their clueless single file. I got up to shoo them away, then saw the steps to the back porch had been removed. I heard strangers' voices inside, realized the house has been sold, and neither of us lives there anymore. I didn't remember the lion, though. Does he belong to you? To take her place. Since I've lived alone, I've been having serial affairs with unconventional personalities. I guess I've been living on the edge. For a while, it was a honey locust tree outside with its opinionated 3-inch thorns. I couldn't tolerate the distance it required. Currently, I have a thing going with the old maple pendulum clock on my night table, a bridge on a rustic string painted on the door. I love to hear it chiming in the night. I wind it faithfully, but I can't satisfy it. It keeps going on strike, complains it's not in the right position. What a tease. I've used a carpenter's level, but even when that shows 0 degrees of tilt, the clock tells me it's not in the mood. Poem about nothing. There used to be as much nothing as I needed. Now I must buy something, cook something, say something, befriend something, find an apartment for something, break the rules of something, regret something, expel something, defer to something, fill the nothingness with something. I've become good at this. It looks like about 5 or so more. Should I eliminate some?
How about 2 more?
2 more. Okay. Okay, I've got 2 more. The Moose in Cleveland Circle. Moose in Cleveland Circle. Friday afternoon in early winter, a moose lies down on the trolley tracks, snorting, shivering in Cleveland Circle. A family walking home to greet the Sabbath, each with a plastic grocery bag, slowly, respectfully approaches this visitor from another neighborhood. The boy with earlocks and a yarmulke rolls an apple toward the beast. It half rises, snorts, and eats. The bearded father, clad in black, wearing an impossibly wide-brimmed beaver hat, tosses a turnip, and his wife in babushka beckons sing-song as she might her cat, and bowls a red-leaf lettuce. She calls softly, "Good Shabbos und a guten Appetit." Street lights come on. The satisfied moose paws the ground, bows his head, and off he goes.
Marvelous.
In conclusion, before I begin, I thank you for remembering my jokes. I forgive you all your no's. I ask your pardon for being too much me. I think I will wander. Now I'm permitted not to make one thought follow after the last. Things call me. Bells from the convent church where Sister Felicita taught me piano. 8 chimes at 8 o'clock, my bedtime, though it was still light. Baby clams below the sand, sending up bubbles as the wave fell back. Clouds in procession, squares of amazement on my quilt. Dream animals.
That is Steve Nickman reading from his book of poems, To Sleep with Bears. And that is available from Amazon, or Steve, if you would want to put your name and address in the chat, people can buy it directly from you.
If I can figure out how to do it, I will do it.
Excellent.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate how beautiful and poignant your relationship poems were. Very real and touching.
Thank you, Carrie.
Beautiful, Steve.
Yeah, I have a question. Can I do that now, Richard?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So, Steve, there was a wonderful poem in your book that you didn't yet, get to read tonight. It was about the boy in the poem says that he doesn't have to tie his shoes. Everyone else can tie his shoes for him because he's going to be a scientist.
That was my autobiographical thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. The question is this: what your book of poems made me think about after reading that poem is that that childhood innocence of saying, I'm going to be a scientist and someone else can do things for me, and yet that boy grows up to be fully human with losses and sadness that no degree is going to absolve that person from, right? It's kind of, there's no protection from being a human being. And I was wondering whether that was a theme, that was something you had in the back of your mind when you were putting together these poems. I know there are many other themes, but I wondered if that struck you when you were putting together the poems.
I'm trying to figure out. So we're talking about childhood grandiosity and how it gets whittled down eventually and squashed. Is that it?
Yeah, in other words, I was wondering whether you had it in your conscious mind to sort of show how, I mean, we all have childhood grandiosity. It's a great word. And then we all learn how misguided we are. I was just wondering if you put your collection together as with that kind of thought in mind.
Yeah.
I think so. I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought, Vivian.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, Stephen, first, just congratulations. It's a beautiful book and on a wonderful reading too. And I've heard your poems for years now. It's so wonderful to have them in a collection. It's such a project doing a book. I wondered, in a way, it's a follow-up to Vivian's question, but from another angle, is what surprised you the most about the process of putting together a collection? What was most challenging? What was most surprising? What was most?
I think
Epiphanies.
I think the obverse of childhood grandiosity is a sense of worthlessness and inability to do much of anything. And so when I found that I actually could do it, it was a surprise. It almost reinforced the grandiosity.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there for now, but we have a bevy of wonderful poets with one poem or one page each to read and share. And I'm going to start out with Margie Flanders, who we haven't seen in a while.
Okay. I took you up on your suggestion of having a father poem. But so many of my father poems are about his dying, and I didn't want to go there tonight. But this one is in his voice. It's fun to write as if I was my father. It's called Me at 100, which I would be today if I hadn't died 7 years ago in a darkened hospice room, delivered of my stubborn breath by the last loaded pink syringe of morphine, after which the ugly nurse in the cat print scrubs yanked the sheet back, pointed to my dark, splotchy calves, saying, "See, he will be home, he will be gone soon." And I wanted to rise up in fury, punch her in the head, but no. After I was gone, a parade of women dressed in black came. My daughter called them angels of death. They stood around me, offered their social work, funeral care, inappropriate prayers. And this I found unseemly and mildly embarrassing. The family got through it somehow, the arrangements, the service, getting rid of clothes. And in a way, I am 100, or at least that's the age of the small pile of my ashes, all that's left of my spry, scrawny frame, the hands that did magic tricks, played trumpet, the legs that carried me to war and back. And oh, my nimble feet, with their way of never seeming to be still. Now I am still. And to keep me close, My daughter will dump the charred bits of me at the concrete corners of the foundation of the studio being built in the woods. And there I shall remain while she writes her poems, maybe listening for my whistle or the snapping of my fingers. And I will try not to disappoint.
Oh,
Thank you, Margie. That reminds me that today is Allen Ginsberg's birthday.
oh.
He would be 100 in the year 2026. Thank you for your father poem. Up next, we have David Miller.
Oh, well, thank you. Steve, it's great for me to be introduced to your poetry. I didn't know it previously. Enjoyed it very much, and I'm borrowing a phrase from your last poem and saying, you know, we now get to be too much ourselves.
Thank
Yeah,
thank you, David.
yeah. Why hang back, right?
I've heard some of yours in the past. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to read a poem that's from my also a father's commemorative poem from my book titled Bend in the Stair. This is Sunrises. It's in two parts, this poem. Sunrises with my father. 1. My father settled in a place where he could walk outdoors all year, made it his pleasure to help the old folks. Retired, but barely stepped across that definite senior discount line, he rose each Florida's pre-dawn, traced on foot the route the paper boys followed to fling the Sarasota Herald Tribune lightly at the ends of driveways. If these neighbors were the definite elders, my parents were numbered among the youngers. He knew the old ones by name, knew which of them needed their news carried to their porches. Warmth and moisture soothed his lungs, grown rasping with Massachusetts freeze. 20 minutes walk before the sun burst out with its own baggage helped to shrink a belly pointlessly enlarged. I wanted to know something about this beyond the tourist guides, about this place, so easy, soft, and alien. Some mornings on our visits near the solstice, those shortened days oddly considered cold, I'd rise and dress in darkness, shielding my wife's shut eyes against marauding light, fumble to the living room to meet him. Off we'd set, do-gooders at the end of night, returned for coffee as bands of red lifted above the roofs. 2. 20 years downstream, my father, a widower, one of the elders, still met the early hours before I cared to. I'd fumble out to meet him, his head crooked back on the rose-pink recliner, shut-eyed after first caffeine. The other olds now fended on their own for headlines dropped at their driveway's ends. The younger elder, I stepped into light for one minuscule good deed, fetched the paper for his second waking, or his third. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Up next, the wonderful magenta Kathy Whitham.
There's unmute. All right, I took the father theme also, took the invitation.
Fantastic.
I'm not muted, right?
No.
Okay. All right, remote controls. A row of perfectly parked remote controls claimed the surface of the end table next to my dad's couch. One spoke directly to the large satellite dish landscaping our side yard. Another conversed with the TV. The rest, a mystery of lights and buttons, communed with various pieces of his precision crafted audio-visual system. He'd teach you to decipher them if you could spare the slow time. I find satellite dishes beautiful. As a child, I'd spoon in front of his red Pendleton plaid belly, watch Johnny Carson, stay up till all hours, him sipping his screwdriver. That couch took on the depression of his weight over many years, pillows becoming permanently slicked. He began riding the bandwidths as a youth, sailing through sissing static to find clear channels to other hams, collecting QSL cards like friends. There wasn't a name for autism back then. In Los Alamos, he built WKRS AM, worked electromagnetic magic on the public power lines with stealth in the dead of night to amplify Brahms and Bach while engineering the bomb. He ran the classical show, pulled the vibrations of piano strings from the airwaves, grooving spirals of concertos onto discs in the studio, saved them like his memories with brittle paper sleeves in a box. I looked out, and wasn't that Mrs. Oppenheimer coming up the path to play piano for the show? She was quite the concert pianist. One Christmas, I gave him a black remote control caddy shaped like ribbon candy. The remotes remained parked in a perfect row on the end table.
Mm. Wow. Thank you.
Uncle B.
Yeah.
Shades of Uncle B.
And now, Jonathan Abel.
Goodness. Wow. Tough act to follow. But I took something older to take up the father theme. So this is the Synagogue of Green Grass. Every summer, Saturday, my father worshiped, walked the roaring mower with its choir of blades away and back. As my brothers and I each in turn grew strong enough to yank the recoil, we were inducted into the mysteries of prime and throttle, spilling gasoline, the sweet benzene smell, mixing with newly manned sweat, while our father instructed us to walk in straight line.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Love it.
Margot Wazansky, you are next.
Congratulations, Steve, on a beautiful book and a beautiful reading. I feel I knew a lot of those poems.
Thank you. Thank you, Margot. Appreciate it.
Father in necktie at the Fountain of Neptune. He's a formal man, buttoned up stiff as a statue in the faded glow of Palazzo della Signoria. He'd promised to send us a photo of Michelangelo's David, and he'd planned the trip to Florence all winter long, then posed before lesser beauty, Neptune, and a sea god with his six-pack, each muscle row its own dark shine, curly hair like my father's. How my father loved the ocean, any body of water, and Neptune was god of them all. His hands are clasped over his midsection as if to hold his own body together, a body he didn't think much of and hated to see in photos. He only wanted to photograph Mother in designer clothes before the wonders of the world. And here he is by himself, handkerchief folded in his jacket pocket, 1950s tourist, his back turned to naked Neptune and the satyrs.
Wonderful.
Wonderful, wonderful. Up next, we have Carla Schwartz.
Oh, what a night. So I have a new book that's coming out. It might be a little delayed, so by the end of this month, hopefully. And I have a father poem that I will read from that book. The book is called Signs of Marriage, and I'll put a link in the chat afterward. But this is a multi-part poem, and it's called Father on His Driveway. Let me wake early to take the brush down to the end of the driveway. Let me walk down carefully, think about my steps rather than the brush. 2. After my cataract surgery, I can see blue, green, but my ankles are thick as trees, so I wear shoes I won't slip in. I promised my daughter I wouldn't slip again. 3. The way flowering vines wander across a scroll of Japanese poetry, I quiet my mind. 4. Sears, Zemansky, and Young is still tucked into the bookshelf near my desk. I haven't cracked it open since I retired. I still know to go to chapter 8 to review impulse and momentum. I used to teach these in my sleep. 5. A young medical student lives around the corner. Mornings he drives by my house on his way to the hospital. Before today, we never met. 6. In my 80th year, I lost my wife. No, I didn't lose her. She expired in my arms. 7. A 50-year-old woman comes home and tells her husband, the doctor told me I had the hips of a 30-year-old. Her husband asks, did he say anything about your 50-year-old ass? No, she says. He didn't say a thing about you. I told that to my daughter, and she laughed. 8. On my forehead a bandage, my badge of honor, taped there by the medical student who passed by when I rolled down the driveway. 9. My own forgetfulness came to me this morning when I met the stubborn vine at the foot of the driveway. One more for the brush can, I thought, but I forgot to brace myself when I tugged and tugged until I won, so as it broke free, my momentum, I fell back, rolled down the concrete, and when I reached bottom, all bloodied, I thought of my wife, who used to tend to our yard, my wife who used to take down the brush. And that's it. Thank you.
Yes, very nice.
Thank you. Thank you, Carla. Up next, we have Deborah DiNicola.
I was going to read a pantoum, but I forgot about this poem about my father. That this is in my first chapbook from 1984, and it's it was all hand set, and it's got woodcuts in it. It was a beautiful little project. The poem's called "On Finding My Father's Medical School Yearbook, 1941." How handsome you were in your slick Sinatra hair, your collar pinned under the thin knot of your tie, both my brother's hollowed cheeks, the sincere Neapolitan eyes. Member of the Poetry Society, it says beneath your chin. When I throw back my head to cry, I laugh like a waterfall. I knew you too well for just half my lifetime, yet you gave me the lyrics to life, like birds uplifting my life, all of Broadway, Marion the librarian, Henry Higgins, Officer Krupke, Gypsy Rose Lee, and all of Al Jolson in blackface down on one knee at the annual country club fair. I can see $100 bills in the air when you aced the steeplechase at Roosevelt Raceway. Those Klan-like birthday parties in ballrooms with beaded curtains, floating accordions, the gaudy rented spaces of Astoria, Queens. You jammed 6 of us in your bed Sunday nights to watch Gunsmoke. You commanded us to kiss the ground of each state when you drove us cross country. Oh, high-strung Italian ancestors from Brooklyn, you raised this man into my destiny, this man whose father carted oranges and avocados through Little Italy, this man who practiced his surgery as an art. And I started remembering that ordinary day in our suburban backyard, not 6 months from the sudden end. He stopped me and held me, telling me loyalty and truth were the only virtues worth knowing. Not knowing himself. All the time they conflicted like fire and ice, like liquor and pills, the impossible compromise I wouldn't realize for 15 years that would corner and claim him and kill him and take him from me.
Nice.
Gorgeous. Wow. Up next, we have Carrie Loftman.
Hello, Steve. It was really wonderful to hear more of your work. I only heard it at open mic, so thank you so much.
Thank you,
And I
Carrie.
can't wait for the book.
Thank you.
I have no father poem finished. Seems to be something I can't really achieve lately, but so I have a Ars Poetica or relationship poem, perhaps. Anyway, here goes. Bottle of Liquitex Classo. Stuck here on the shelf with all forsworn tools and neglected habits, I wait. When you come back to me, you better be all penitent and ambitious. You'll prepare blank canvases, thickly opaque, purely monochrome, ready for illusions of depth, underpaintings of commitment. My label says transparent, but you'll use me to gloss your motives with actions of indecent fluidity, slowly brush stroking the long hair of your self-portrait, vanity tangled with smoke in a mirror.
Thank you. Up next, Connemara Wadsworth.
Okay. I didn't even think about the father poem, so, but I won't apologize for that. Steve, it was wonderful to hear the poems that you've been working on for so long, and I have finished the book, and I enjoyed so much of it.
I'm glad, Connemara. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. This is a recent poem about a long ago incident. What solace? The gerbils he brought home from the school fair, one parent annoyed, the other perplexed. He was beyond the age to want soft creatures to care for. When in the night the redundant spinning of the treadmill kept him awake, he moved their cage to the hallway. In the morning, to his horror at finding one dead, the other wounded, soon lifeless. Through his sobs, said he'd been promised one was male, the other female. We stumble on our preferred myths of harmony, the near promise of a life lived whole, dashed by adults, hits a child deeply as betrayal. And what ready words of solace could I offer my son, who'd imagined the pair would make a life, mate for life, unlike his parents, their marriage dissolving, their ghost white silence.
Thank you, Connemara. Up next, we have Thrasos Kaligas.
Oh, is this, can you hear me?
Yes.
Steve, thank you for this reading, which was very inspiring. I have a father poem, an old father poem, but it's called After My Father's Visit in New Orleans. My father, you came to visit, brought me news from home and a bag full of edible goods, which did not threaten your elegance or charm. We had such a good time with my friends, Marianne hysterically crying after you told the story so well. She never heard a story told so well. And you were gone when you started missing home and the girls.
Thank you. And our penultimate poet, Wendy Drexler.
So this father theme is a thing. This is the first themed open mic I've ever been in. So I will read a father poem. This is called Corral. Somewhere my father had another whole family I didn't know. A wife I didn't know, hardly ever saw. One son and a younger son. Somewhere he lived with all of them in a house. I went to that house once. Was it brick? Maybe a lawn, some trees, living happily ever after. I lived with my mother. My father came for me on weekends. Once he told me a secret about this family. One of his sons wasn't his real son. He told me no one else knew. Perhaps he told me this to make me feel special, because I was his favorite child, his only daughter. I liked keeping his secret. He trusted me with it. I guarded it desperately. It charged around inside me like a herd of horses galloping across a vast bare plain. To keep the horses safe, every time I saw my father, I wore the red cowgirl boots he'd bought for me and made of myself a corral.
Very nice.
Wow, amazing. Up next, we have Ms. Lee.
Me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for asking for so late. And first, I want to thank Steve. I have such a wonderful book. And in our group, I enjoyed you so much. You're so wise and you know Chinese very well. Your pronunciation is very good too. And how do you learn? I especially enjoy your sense of humor. And in your poem, it's so much humor, so much fun.
Thank you, Shirley.
And I read a father poem too. You are a mountain, blessing for my father on his 93rd birthday. The mountain is looming, indelible peaks and ridges. You took me to swim across the Yiyuantan River. My hands held on to your shoulders. I rested by your side on the grass on summer nights, listened to you tell the story of the cow herd and the weaver girl. I looked up at you, looked up at the stars. The mountain seemed far away. You were once absorbed in work. Then later I was taking root in a new land. We missed and watched each other through the fog. The mountain endured the thunder gusts when mother was forced to the labor farm by the anti-right movement. For love, you refused to renounce her. The mountain kept silent when they targeted you for our sake. You alone shouldered the upside down cultural revolution. The mountain spoke no words. Your heroism, your metals of honor, how many vicissitudes of history you have witnessed. Now I have walked into the depths of the mountain, your calmness and firmness, your abundance and broadness. On our video chats, you are wise and keen, just like your favorite writers, Cao Xueqin and Lu Xun. You take me to the forest of art, philosophy, and life. I linger with the mountain, listen to your heart echoing. Remember the year you walked with a cane, hand in hand we talked until dusk. The mountain stands strong, lasts long and long. The sun shines through the clouds and halos you, full of morning blessings. My eyes pools of dew. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Well, I want to end this open mic kind of in the spirit of Eric Hyatt and Barbara Hyatt before him. Eric, when he would substitute for me as the host, would give unkind introductions and unnice anecdotes and so forth. And so in that spirit, I want to read an anti-father poem. Just like Rilke. I'm ready for my castle, nestled in a European mountainside, just like Rainer Maria Rilke's, brought to him by every wealthy widowed countess. I'll leave my wife and children, if I have some, to cling to ancient marble dug from storied depths, flung to these starry heights, while Rilke's angel scares the bejesus out of me and turns my adrenaline into an opus by candlelight. I want to not just be seen, but be held, to be called by my pronouns of thee and thou. I'm ready, bring it on. My pencil is razor sharp, up for the task.
Bravo. Bravo.
So that concludes our formal aspect of tonight's gathering. And it has been some gathering. And we had the mother theme last time, and now we've got the father theme. And it seems to have spoken to us and caused us to dig up some earlier treasures. Very, very good, very good.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Yeah, it worked out really well. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Steve.